Alright guys, today we're going to be diving into our poster and talking about ATP synthesis and the DNA and some of the key properties about that, and we're going to kind of go through that process. The first thing I want to mention is that all living things need ATP, including ourselves. You know, everything uses energy. ATP is like the energy storage. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. And like I said, it's the energy storage and the energy transfer site that we use in order to do anything. You know, anything we do requires energy, and that consists of fat, carbs, or proteins can be used for our bodies to help create synthesis. So we start with that, and then we go into the DNA, the ATP synthesis, and all that, and we'll dive in from there. So starting off with the ATP structure, ATP is a nucleotide which is broken into three groups. That is a phosphate group, pentose sugar, and the nitrogenous base. As you can see in the mechanism of ATP synthesis is we have three of those things right here, and you can start seeing those reactions start to happen, okay? So high energy bonds is where the energy is stored and it can be used for immediate use. So it can be broken down for immediate use, excuse me. And so H2O is split. Go ahead and bring it down here. And we can talk about how ATP turns into ADP, right? So as you can see, the H2O is split and hydrogen is released, right? And also another hydrolysis is there, and it's used for energy. Because you can see our water's here, H2O, and then hydrogen bonds get released. So what happens there is ATP turns into ADP, and that's how you can use it for immediate use. And the difference between ATP and ADP is that ADP has one less phosphate group. Moving on to the citric acid cycle, as you can see here. On top of that, we got the pyruvate dehydrogenase. So what that means is we're taking apart, right? We're dehydrating something, so it's getting apart. And this citric acid cycle is built from fat, proteins, things like that, kind of we mentioned earlier in one of our creation sites for ATP as well. And if you look onto our big map here, we have an arrow here, we have an arrow here, we have an arrow here. So a lot of things are leading back to this citric acid cycle, which was one of our base foundations on creating energy. Our next step here is breakdowns of sugar. So that's going to lead us into glycogenesis, which is a breakdown of glucose. So as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, is that sugar is another thing that we're going to need for ATP. So our breakdown here, glycogenesis, it comes from glycosis, the citric acid cycle, and it all leads back into glycogenesis as well, because it's one of our main factors on how to break down sugars and glucose. And like I said, we have dietary fats mentioned here because it's another way that we can create energy. So as you can see, all these things are starting to work together, and they kind of combine together to help create ATP. All right, last thing I'd like to mention, breaking down this diagram is something that I personally like is the squalene. That's the hydration of the cell. That's what's going to keep our cell hydrated, make sure it has energy to work. As you can see, we work with sugar. I have glutamate here. So a lot of this was based around sugars as well. So you have your ATP right here, right? You have glutamate here, and they're all linking up together. You can see your green squares right here, and that's where our positive reactions are beginning to form. So, thank you so much for listening to my breakdown of our diagram and the importance of ATP, ADP, the breakdown, the chain, transport, and how water breaks off the hydrogen compounds, and everything like that. Thank you.